Hi guys, my name is Vanessa Smedley and I'm a painter. Today we are going to paint a sketch of this old silo right here from my hometown in Oklahoma. I'm not going to give you the exact town because I like to protect my family, but anyways, this old silo has an interesting story because it has been there for flipping ever, but it used to have houses and barns and stuff like that surrounding it until a few years ago when a tornado came through and flattened everything around it to the point where it had to be torn down. But the silo still stood because it was built so strongly that the storm couldn't take it out. And I've always thought that was an interesting story, so we're going to paint this, and we're going to paint it on this new sketchbook right here. This is from the German company. Paper company that I reviewed a while ago. It's 100% cotton. I'm going to flash up a pronunciation for you because I'm still not going to say it.
Hahnemühle. Hahnemühle.
But we're going to give that a go today and just do a sketch, not a finished painting, and so it should be fun. So let's do this. Here are the materials for today. They are also listed in the description for you. I'm using all of my travel stuff today since I'm testing out this sketchbook. I want it to be just like as if I was outdoors. As I said, this is my first time trying out this new sketchbook by this German paper company that shall remain nameless. It is a hardback. It is the 100% cotton version. The pages are 120 pound, cold pressed. It's got this nice little closure here. It also has like a little bookmark thing you can use in there to keep your place if you want to. It seems to be really nice, so we're just gonna go ahead and give it a shot. Okay, I've got it opened up, and as you can see, it lays pretty flat for one of the hardback sketchbooks. I'm just gonna go ahead and clip it like I would outdoors. I'm just gonna clip it on the edges so that the pages won't buckle. I usually do it like this on either side. Just like I would in the field, I'm using my Winsor & Newton Cotman travel set here. And I've got Payne's Gray, and I'm mixing in some cerulean blue. This is for the sky, that nice stormy sky. Now, since this is kind of a quick sketch and it's not going to take me 3 hours to paint like I normally would, I'm actually going to do this mostly real time for you. So right now I've got my number 12 round brush. This is an Escoda Perla, and I am wetting the entire sky because I'm going to start with the sky. Honestly, for sketches, I don't usually paint wet on wet like this, but for this particular sky, this nice stormy, wintry sky, I want to make sure that it flows together really nicely, so I am going to go ahead and wet it. Then I begin dropping in all of that Payne's Gray. I'm going to start out kind of light here and just get it covered. And then I'm going to come back in where the darker areas of cloud is with a little bit darker of a mixture. I'm just continuing to add in this Payne's Gray, and I'm actually using kind of an upward sweep motion because that's kind of the direction that the clouds are going in anyway. And then I'm going to continue that line down a little bit into the landscape just to make it blend a little bit better. Now I've mixed up a little bit thicker consistency of that Payne's Gray, and I'm just adding that in the areas where the clouds are a little bit darker and moodier. You can see that the brush strokes I'm adding in here are kind of short and kind of billowy. That's just to add in the texture of the clouds here. Then I'm going to scrunch up just a little bit of my shop towel, and I'm going to lift out a little bit of that color that is on the silo. I just don't like adulterated color. I've told you guys that before, but that's what I'm doing here. I'm just taking out a little bit of that color from the sky on here. Then I take my trusty spray bottle and I'm just going to give it a spray to keep these washes moving. Just want it to mix a little bit better than that. Now this travel palette does not have a yellow ochre, which I may remedy here in the future, but I'm starting out with cadmium yellow and then I'm adding some burnt umber and a little bit of Payne's gray to basically make my own yellow ochre. Actually, I guess I tipped this color a little bit more to the brown side, but anyway. So I'm taking that color, it's a very light wash, and I'm just running this all across all of this dead grass, dead wintry grass down here at the bottom. And, you know, I'm not taking as much care as I normally would because, like I said, this is a sketch. And I'm really just kind of trying to pretend like I'm out in the field like I would anytime that I'm painting outdoors. You just don't have a ton of time to sit there and fuss over details when you're doing that. So I'm trying to simulate that right now. So I'm just adding in a wash of that color. Now through this foreground, I'm going to come back in and add a little bit of burnt umber, maybe a little bit of Payne's gray, and add just a little bit of this kind of undulation of these hills here. Undulation, that's a great word, I must say. I kind of think this area on the right here got a little bit too dark, so I'm coming back in with my brush and I'm just lifting that out a little bit and blending it off to the left. So even though this is February, I'm still seeing just a tiny little bit of green grass poking through. So I'm going to add some sap green here and there in a few patches just to add a little bit of a sense of that green variation. I think we need a little bit more burnt umber Payne's gray mix here just to darken it up a little bit. Add a little bit of that on kind of on that second middle hill here, you know, just here and there. You want to make sure there's at least a little bit of visual separation between that closest hill and the one that starts kind of right where the silo starts as well. Okay, now you've got this distant hill back here, and I've got a very, very watery mix of Payne's gray, and I'm just adding that in real quick. It was very, very misty on this day, so it's kind of just barely there. Normally I would kind of let that dry before I start going in with another color, but since it's very misty and it kind of runs into each other anyway, I'm using this burnt umber and Payne's gray mix to add in these darker hills in the back of the silo. So I'm just adding those little guys in here, trying to be careful to paint around the silo just because I don't want to have to lift that out again. Just adding in the color now, and then here in a little bit I'll be adding in a little bit darker of a color too towards the bottom to add some shadow to all of these trees here. So after looking at this, I think it's a little bit too smooth at the top, and I'm going to come back in and do some dry brushing along the top and add in kind of that texture of faraway trees. So we're just turning our brushes on its side with kind of a dry mix of paint here, and I'm just brushing a little bit of texture along the top here. Okay, now I'm adding a little bit more Payne's gray into the same color, and now I'm going to come back in and do this kind of at the bottom of the tree line, and this is going to end up being the shadows that make it not just look like one big mass of something. This is going to show you that it's got a little bit of shadow and there are trees there. As I'm looking at the picture, you can see there's a lot of trees kind of in the middle distance that have the white bark. I don't know if they're birch trees. I don't really think we have birch trees in my hometown, but whatever they are, their bark is white. So I'm actually taking a palette knife and I'm just scraping that wet paint that I've just laid down, and that is going to scrape it back to the white of the paper, and it's going to give me a little bit of that white back for these little tree branches and stuff and trunks. And I'm just going to continue to do that. And I'm just going to speed up this footage a little bit because you don't have to watch me do that over and over again. Now I'm going to mix some Payne's Gray with some burnt umber and then a much lighter, more watery mix of that. Now I'm using the watery mix, and I'm just going to go ahead and lay a foundation of color all over the silo to start out with. And I'm going to go ahead and just cover the entire area, including the top part of it and the windows and all of that kind of stuff. While this is still wet, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the shadow side. So I'm adding in some of the darker, thicker consistency mix of this on the left side of the building. Just going to get darker and darker on the left side to make it look cylindrical. And I'm going to leave most of this right side kind of a little bit on the lighter side, other than at the very bottom, because it gets a little darker there from all the rain running down for centuries. I don't know if it's been centuries, but anyway, it looks like it's been centuries, doesn't it? Flip. It looks like I got quite a bit out of line on this left side. I'm probably going to eventually have to fix that. But anyways, looks like a little bit of that dark color spread a little bit too much, and it's kind of on the lid of this thing. You probably don't call it a lid. But anyway, I've used my brush to lift that out back to the light. And now I'm using some burnt sienna to add in some variation in color here, just to show those differences in this weather-worn thing here. Dang it, I got out of alignment on the right side too. I'm trying to fix that, but I may have to end up coming back and fixing it at the very end. I took a little bit of a break and I let this whole thing kind of dry. And now I'm using some of my brown mixture and I'm dry brushing across the foreground here in order to get some of that kind of dried grass texture. I'm not worried about getting like individual brush strokes in for all of this tiny little grass. I'm just getting kind of a texture in, and if I ever do like a finished painting of this, then I can come back in and add details like that. But for this, I mean, I think you get the picture. You get the point that it's dried grass. You can come back in and add as much more detail as you want later. Then I'm adding a little bit more of a demarcation between the two hills here. There's this one in front, and then there's the one that begins basically right at the silo. And then it goes back to where you've got all of those trees. So I'm just making this middle ground a little bit more obvious. I think we need to add in a little bit of that green as well. So I'm coming back in to dry brush a little bit of the green texture in as well. I think that may be a little bit strong. I mean, this is winter after all. I think I need to get a little bit of my shop towel and kind of dab out just a little bit of that. Yeah, there we go. Just adding a little bit more texture. I'm going to speed this up because it's kind of the same thing you just watched me do. Now I've got a darker consistency of my dark brown here, and I'm just going to come back in and I'm going to add some of these like background trees. I guess this is technically in the middle ground, I guess, but I'm just going to add a little bit of tree texture and some of the brush coming from behind, and just add some of that extra detail. And I'm going to dry brush in some more texture, and I'm going to actually bring that down to the middle ground. It's actually just right behind this hill that the silo is on, so I'm just going to bring that down to that line. I'm not trying to get too carried away with detail here because really this is just a sketch. It's just an impression of what's there. If I do a finished painting of this, I can go back in and add all that detail. I really just need an overall impression of what's going on here. And since I'm kind of doing the same thing over and over again, I'm going to go ahead and speed up the footage again. There's only so many trees you can watch me paint in, right? Okay, all of this is pretty much dry, and I'm coming back in. I'm going to do some detail work on it. So I've got my darkest of my brown mixes. We're going to run a shadow underneath the lid here. I should probably call it a roof because that's probably what it is, but it's more fun to call it a lid, so that's what I'm going to do. It's the lid. I'm just adding the shadow underneath the lid here, and then I am going to turn my brush on its side and I'm going to dry brush in some of this concrete texture. Now I'm going to do it just like I did before and make it the most dark on the left side, and it'll be lighter on the right side since that's where the light is coming from. And we're just adding some of that texture. We're going to come down here, and it's got kind of a concrete type texture, so we're just skipping across the mountains and valleys of this paper, and that's causing that kind of a dry brush effect to come down. And it works really great for concrete and for grass and for, you know, tree bark, any of that kind of stuff, anything with kind of a rough texture. So just adding some more shadow on the left side again. Now I've got pretty much plain straight Payne's gray. It does have a little bit of water in it, but I'm using my number 4 round brush here, and I'm adding in the windows. I'm going as dark as I can get them because I really only want to paint them once. Now, unfortunately, my paint here is so dark that I can't actually see where I drew the windows here before, so I'm kind of having to wing it a little bit, but I'm just going to speed this up so you don't have to watch me put in window after window. But it does turn out that if you look at the photo, the windows are kind of wonky anyway. So, I mean, I got them a little crooked, but they're kind of that way anyway. Okay, now I'm going to come back in with some darker Payne's Gray, and I'm just adding a darker shadow underneath the lid. And then I'm going to come back in and add some of these concrete lines. It's not going to be as dark as that shadow, but I'm using the darkest of my browns for this. And coming back in and doing some of the horizontal lines that is basically the seams of the concrete. I'm getting really close to getting finished here, but I'm going to come back in with my Milky Pop white gel pen that's made by Pentel. And I'm just going to add a little bit more of that white bark on these middle distance trees. I'm not going to go crazy with it, I'm just going to add a little bit to it. Now, sometimes these pens kind of get clogged when you do this on top of watercolor like this, so you kind of have to clean the tips off in between when you're doing it, but it works pretty well. And I'm going to speed that up as well. And here it is finished. And I'm going to be honest, I did come back in and straighten the sides of the silo a little bit. But as you can see, this paper has dried nice and flat. You can see where I had my clips, but that's just one of the things that comes along with, you know, a sketch. I'm not worried about it. It also, if you pick it up, you can tell that it dried really flat. And after a while of sitting there flat with the rubber band around it, it's really going to be flat. So I really enjoy this paper. I really think it's a great sketchbook, especially since most of the ones that I've used have not been 100% cotton. It honestly feels like I'm just using one of my normal papers, so I'm going to call that great. On these sketches, I usually write down the location while I'm on location, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to call that finished. And there you have it, a quick little sketch of the silo that could not be flattened. Let that be a little bit of a lesson for your life, I say. Anyways, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff, because that's how this channel gets to grow. I will see you again in 2 weeks.